Hello everyone. Today I want to share a judges education seminar that I recently presented for the American Dog Show Judges Association Advanced Institute in conjunction with the Louisville cluster of dog shows. I hope that everyone, whether you're a judge, a breeder, or a breed enthusiast, can take something away from this and gain a little bit more knowledge than they may have had before. Thank you.
With the Connie Corso for a very long time, well over 20 years, way before we got into AKC. For those of you that don't know, the AKC put us into the working group in 2010. So we've only been involved in AKC for 12 years, okay? The breed itself was only recognized by the Italian Kennel Club as an official Italian breed in 1994. So as far as being a recognized breed, okay, it's a relatively new breed, although the origins go way, way, way back. I have an article that I gave you that I did that's on the origins. A modern day breed with ancient origins is the title of that article. The Connie Corso is probably the closest modern day breed to the ancient Roman war dogs. We know that a lot of breeds can trace their roots back to the dogs of Rome. But I would have to say that the Connie Corso is the closest modern day breed to those dogs, okay? You guys are probably going to think about the Neapolitan mastiff in that same aspect, and we're going to talk about the Neapolitan mastiff some in this presentation, because you cannot talk about the Connie Corso without talking about its cousin, the Neapolitan mastiff, okay? I'm going to spend a lot of time on history, mostly because of all the diversity that you see in the breed today. So we have a lot of diversity, especially in the head, okay? And the reasons for that are all in the history, both some of the older history and recent history. So I'm going to cover all of that in the history part, so you'll understand when you look at it in the Corso ring and you see it, sometimes it looks like a group ring because there's diversity. Have any of you noticed that? You look at the Corsos and it's like they're all over the place in head type. So we're going to cover a lot in the head type, although it's not a head breed. Okay, the Connie Corso should always be a functional, sound, solid, strong dog, okay? It's not a head breed, but the breed type, of course, is in the head, and that's where we have the most diversity right now. But by no means is it a head breed, okay? So you can find in old artwork a lot of pictures and sculptures and statues of dogs that look very similar to the Connie Corso. If you look, at the skull and the relatively short muzzle, you'll see the converging planes of the skull and muzzle, which is a key aspect of Connie Corso breed type. This is one of many examples. I don't have them all for you, but you can definitely see a resemblance in lots of the old artwork. Everybody knows the jetting dog pretty much. Do you know the history of it? It's, I think it's like 400 BC this statue was in Rome. So you can see the resemblance of definitely a mastiff type dog with cropped ears, okay? This is a book that I got the pleasure of seeing when I visited with Fernando Castellino, who was the godfather of the Connie Corso. He helped the recovery, he helped write the breed standard. I had the pleasure of visiting with him when he was 95 years old at his home in Bologna, Italy. I'm probably the only American to ever visit with him. Unfortunately, of course, a few years later he passed away. In any event, he shared this book with me, and this was an Italian book of dog breeds, basically. And the copyright was 1952, all right? And if you look where it says Malasso, right next to Malasso it says Mastino Napolitano, Connie Depressor, and Connie Corso. Mastino Napolitano, of course, being the Neapolitan mastiff, okay? Back then, those dogs were all considered the same basic type of dogs. None of them were recognized yet officially. Well, the Neapolitan mastiff wasn't recognized yet officially by the Italian Kennel Club. So the Connie Depressor, the Connie Corso, the Mastino Napolitano were all similar. My Connie Corso could be your Neapolitan mastiff, your Neapolitan mastiff could be your Connie Depressor. Similar but different. It actually says in this, I don't have all of it here, but it said in it that the dogs could range in weight from 100 to 150 pounds, okay? All the colors that we have today in the Cane Corso were listed in here, all right? So in 1952, the Neapolitan Mastiff was recognized as an Italian breed. The first breed standard, where it says the Mastino Napolitano, still retained Cane Depressor and Cane Corso as subnames for the breed. So the original Neapolitan Mastiff standard recognized that breed as still being or including the Cane Corso and Cane Depressor. This was the very first Neapolitan Mastiff kennel. As you can see, you say 1930 to 1952. If you look at the dogs, you can see the diversity of type then. But the reality is, from today's Neapolitan Mastiff to these dogs, they look more like Cane Corsos than do Neapolitan Mastiffs, especially the top right and the bottom two girls, okay? Top left dog was actually a blue dog. Top right was a black dog. The bottom right was a blue dog, and the bottom left was a black dog. So the Neapolitan Mastiff, once it became recognized, started going through a transition to where everything was exaggerated. The bone, the wrinkle, okay? If you look at today's Neapolitan Mastiff, it doesn't resemble this, okay? This is Julione. Julione was a prototype for the Neapolitan Mastiff when it was recognized in 1952. And as you can see, he would be more at home in the Cane Corso ring today than he would in the Neapolitan Mastiff ring, all right? That's a picture, it's blurry, I actually took it out of a photo album when I was at Fernando's. That's a picture in the 1970s of still a Neapolitan Mastiff in the 1970s. Okay, still in 1970s Neapolitan Mastiff.
Was that you?
It was me a long time ago, very long time ago. So that's a Cane Corso, obviously a little bit after the turn of the century, okay? Not a Cane Corso. And that was me with Fernando Castellino when I visited him with him. And he wrote the very first book, The Cane Corso, on the Cane Corso. So in any event, Fernando Castellino grew up in southern Italy, although he became a professor at the University of Bologna, actually a biologist, all right? But he always had a passion for the dogs. And he always hated to see that the way the Cane Corso or the Neapolitan Mastiff had transpired, a century, a decade after decade, how it had transpired into what it became, a very non-functional dog, basically just a guard dog, no longer an Italian farm dog. And fortunately, there was an article written in the late 1970s about the Cane Corso, the ancient dog that's still doing some farm work in southern Italy. And a very young man or kid at that time named Stefano Gandolfi read the article and became just totally wanted to find more about that breed that's down there in southern Italy, because he was also in northern Italy. So he contacted the author, who was Paulo Breber. Paulo Breber also worked at the university where Fernando had retired from. So basically, Paulo Breber told Stefano Gandolfi, hey, contact Fernando Castellino. He could probably help you maybe get into the dogs, find some of the dogs and what have you. So in any event, Stefano Gandolfi got with Fernando Castellino, and they started on a quest to go to southern Italy and try and find some dogs. Stefano Gandolfi, fortunately, had a lot of resources. His parents were millionaires, long time in the textile business in northern Italy. So he had the resources, the financial resources, to actually begin a recovery program of the breed. I guess his parents thought it would be better for a 15-year-old kid to be involved with dogs and some other things, right? So they basically would spend weeks in southern Italy on the farmlands. And southern Italy is very rural, okay? On the farmlands trying to find puppies, dogs, whatever they could. And they would bring them back to northern Italy, where they both lived, and where there was a German Shepherd breeder named Giancarlo Malavasi. And they actually paid them to house the dogs and do the breedings and raise the puppies and what have you. So they started a recovery program, not a reconstruction program, but a recovery program for the Cane Corso. In conjunction with that, they formed a club called the Society of Cane Corso Lovers, or SACC. It's similar to what our parent clubs would be today. So they formed a club, and more people got involved, and they also got involved with the Italian Kennel Club. Italian Kennel Clubs signed a couple of their most technical, prestigious judges to work hand in hand with the breed club to help recover and develop the breed, and hopefully at some point get recognition for it. So they continued to seek out dogs that were as far different from today's Neapolitan Mastiff. In other words, a little bit lighter built, a little bit drier, a little bit more athletic. Because the Italian Kennel Club wasn't going to recognize a variety of the Neapolitan Mastiff. The Neapolitan Mastiff became the national dog of Italy. So they weren't going to have a variety of it or anything similar to. So the dogs had to be different, okay? Although the direction of the Neapolitan Mastiff kind of dictated that to some degree in any event, right? So they continued on that process, and the judges would take measurements of all the dogs, record the measurements on these sheets, and the judges would start compiling a breed standard based off the measurements of the dogs.
We can't see.
All right? So these were like written critique sheets with weights, heights, all the critical and important measurements of the dogs, okay? And then they also started certifying dogs with an initial or LIR number, or initial registration number, into a stud book, even though they were not recognized as an official breed. So in 1980, Bezer was born. Bezer would become the prototype for the Cane Corso, all right? The key characteristics were the converging planes of the skull and muzzle, the relatively short muzzle, the relatively wide head, and a very slight undershot bite. In other words, the key characteristics of the Cane Corso are that of a brachycephalic breed, but very slight brachycephalic characteristics, just barely there, okay? Nothing exaggerated, not extreme brachycephalic characteristics. And that is Bezer again. That was the critique sheet for Bezer. That was Bezer's littermate named Bullen. Another good example of the breed. Also obviously born in 1980, being a littermate. And that was the sire of both of those dogs of the prototype, named Dono, okay? And you can see the key characteristics in the head in this photo very clearly, okay? Definitely different than Neapolitan Mastiff. And this is that club, SAC. Fernando Castellino is right on the end to the right. It's Fernando with Bezer right there, and some of the other dogs that they had that were working into the recovery program. All right, so I'm gonna stop there for a minute. All right, so here comes the diversity part. While this was transpiring in Italy, we had gotten the first Cane Corsos on the shores here in the United States in the late 90s, okay? And they were quite different dogs than what was going on with the recovery program in Italy. Specifically, they were brought to this country by a longtime Neapolitan Mastiff breeder named Mickey Sotilli. So Sotilli brought one litter of Cane Corsos here, but initially he didn't even call them Cane Corsos, he called them Sicilian Brancario, which was another name for another mastiff type working dog in southern Italy. So he brought those here, and Shortly afterwards, he changed the name when he realized what was going on in Italy from Sicilian Brancario to Cane Corso. So our first Cane Corsos that we had here in the United States looked like this. This is Kokomo. Kokomo was probably the most famous of the original dogs that came here from that litter, okay? Kokomo had no brachycephalic characteristics, okay? When Sotilli brought the Cane Corso here, he brought another litter of Cane Corsos here shortly afterwards, and he did what he did with the Neapolitan Mastiffs at that time, which was to start his own registry. So he started his own registry for the Cane Corsos. So in order to have the registry, he had to write his own breed standard, which he did based off of these dogs. So while the breed standard and the direction of the breed in Italy was slight brachycephalic characteristics, converging planes of the skull and muzzle, slight undershot bite, the breed standard in the United States, our first US standard, called for parallel planes and nothing but a scissor bite. So this is why you still see a lot of diversity, especially here in the United States. And that breed standard was in place pretty much unchanged until 2000, okay? In 2000, the breed standard changed the parallel planes to converging planes, like the Italians had, and also allowed for a slight undershot bite, where it never did before. But it also retained the scissor bite. It didn't remove the scissor bite. We still have that today. We have scissor to undershot. And if you know dog types, that's a big contrast. The muzzle configurations that create either an undershot or a scissor bite are drastically different, okay? Fortunately, again, though, the Cane Corso, the brachycephalic characteristics are just very slight, okay? Another key aspect of the original American standard was that one of the colors that was written in that standard was black and tan, specifically black and tan points, just like on a Rottweiler, okay? And also blue and tan. We had black and tan and blue and tan pointing Cane Corsos. The standard, of course, retained that until 2000. It was taken out. It was never made a fault or anything, but it was just taken out in 2000. Today's standard that we have now in AKC has it as a fault. The reason that it has it as a fault, and it should have it as a fault, because the other part of the story with Mickey Sotilli and the litters that he had was that his wife, who he met through the dog world, was a long-time Rottweiler breeder, okay? So he didn't have the access to the dogs that they had in Italy, obviously. He had a couple litters, so what are you gonna do? I mean, you have to do something. So it was definitely absolutely a lot of Rottweiler mixing done with the original American dogs. So much so that black and tan and blue and tan was included in the standard. Never part of the Italian standard. Never had to be made a fault or a DQ in the Italian standard, okay? So that's, again, some more of the diversity, okay, that we still see today. So.
Got another dry pack.
It's another one of the original American dogs from the first litter, Bruno. You can see the type's quite different than the Baiser and Bullen dogs that I showed you from the same time period. Another American dog from the original litters. All right, so we're going to fast forward here a little bit. We're going to fast forward to 2000. In 2000, this dog became, his name is Cano, and he won the World Dog Show, which happened to be in Italy in 2000. He went on to win it again in 2001, 2002, okay? So you can see that the brachycephalic characteristics became a little bit extreme in Cano. I'm very good friends with Cano's breeder, who is also a very well-respected judge in Italy for the Cane Corso and for other breeds now. He'll be the first to tell you the muzzle was too short on this dog, okay? But unfortunately, this started a trend. Everybody thought that, well, Cano won World Show three years in a row, so everybody started wanting that look, that shorter muzzle, that heavier, more brachycephalic characteristic look, okay? So what they don't realize, well, a lot of people didn't realize about Cano was also a very sound, structurally sound, great moving dog. Okay, so there was more to it than just that shortening of the muzzle. All right, and at that time, the structure wasn't the best, period. So he won, not so much because of that, but because he was the best moving, best structured dog that was around at that time. But in any event, other breeders, as the breed became popular and started exploding actually in Italy and in Europe, started taking shortcuts. And to get this look, they started using other breed influences, specifically boxers and bull mastiffs. And you'll see a lot of boxer and bull mastiff influence in the dogs of that period. Thankfully, a lot of that's going away now. So in the same time frame in 2000, that's the World Dog Show winner in Italy. This was the 2000 National Specialty winner here in the United States. His name was Smokey. So you can see the contrast of type. And around 2000, some of us were starting to bring dogs from Italy into the United States, more so than prior. So we're going to fast forward now to 2015. In 2015, this was the World Dog Show winner. I was actually at the World Dog Show in Milan. They had a record 363 Cane Corso entries. Yeah. And that was the World Dog Show winner. Our National Specialty winner in 2015 was Italica's 50 Shades of Gray, okay, which actually Zoe DeVita is the breeder. She's here with us. She's bred multiple National Specialty winners, multiple Dogs of the Year, multiple Breeder of the Year, and she's here with us today. This was her dog. So thankfully, around 2015, you can see where between what was going on in Europe and what was going on here became a lot closer than we had been, say, around 2000, even 2005. So the type's getting better, it's getting more consistent, but you will still see the diversity. And you're going to see that diversity because of the reasons that I explained. One, the breed itself was very diverse. It was all over southern Italy. The recovery program was looking for characteristics, but there was still a lot of diversity in the dogs they used in the recovery program, of course. These are rural, working, southern farm dogs. We had a different direction we were going in the United States. We had a different standard. We started putting all those dogs together. Then we had the extremeness or the hyper type from the other breed influences that went on in Europe. So this is why you're going to see all the diversity still pop out a lot of times in the ring. So if you look at the dog and you see other breed influences, that's common to see that, unfortunately, still. All right, and I was saying how it shouldn't be a head breed. We're going to spend a lot of time on the details of the head, but it shouldn't be a head breed. These are two of my dogs working a wild boar. All right. It's another one of my dogs working a wild boar. So the heritage of the breed in southern Italy was a versatile working farm dog. Whatever that Italian farmer needed that dog to do, it had to be able to do it. They didn't have multiple dogs. Hog hunters today will have bay dogs and then catch dogs. The Italian farmer would use the dog for herding, livestock protection, hunting wild boar, hunting badger. Cane Corso going to badger, whole lock on the badger, he'd pull it out. So the Cane Corso had to be a versatile farm dog capable of doing whatever task that Italian farmer needed him to do, including accompanying that farmer to market and back with his goods to protect him from being robbed. Okay? So they had to be very versatile. They had to do this in southern Italy, Mediterranean climate, hot and humid. They had to be able to work all day long in that. So a Cane Corso's structure should be extremely sound with a lot of endurance. If you have a dog in the ring and you're looking at the structure on it, just think of this picture. Could that dog perform that task? Could that dog lock onto the ear of this 350-pound boar and stop him and hold him? Okay? Boars are very quick, very nasty, very strong. So the dog doesn't have to have a lot of power and strength, he also has to have a lot of agility to be able to do that task. So that's a good picture to reference as far as why the structure is so important. All right, we're ready for the next part. Anybody have any questions about any of that? All right. So this is the Parent Club breed seminar. I was the judges and breed education director for the Parent Club for a number of years. I'm no longer on the board of directors, Unfortunately, we don't have an illustrated standard. We don't even have a lot of good diagrams yet, okay? That's why I gave you so much handout material. The handout material I gave you is actually a lot of Italian Kennel Club drawings, as you could figure out, because I translated them into English, right? So basically, we're going to use this seminar in the handout material here in a bit.
Is this available on your website?
It is. It's on the Parent Club website. All right, so again, the history is a versatile Italian farm dog, whether it's herding, hunting. You can see the badger hunting right there in the middle picture. Whatever task could be done or needed to be done, they were capable of doing and did do. Okay. All right. So again, the head. The head's the key marker. Should be a very distinct, very unique head. Okay, shouldn't have the influence of any other breed in it. Shouldn't resemble any other breed, especially the Neapolitan mastiff. Cane Corso is very dry. Doesn't have a lot of wrinkle. Neapolitan mastiff, of course, purposely has a lot of wrinkle. All right. All right. So size, proportion, substance. The standard says on a bitch, 23.5 to 26, on a dog 25.5, 25 to 27.5, okay? It should have good bone and good substance, good muscle, all right? An average Cane Corso male is probably around 130, and an average bitch is probably around 110. I have no problem with a dog that might be 28 or 29 inches at the withers and 150 pounds as long as it's functional. Again, the heritage of the breed came from versatility. So as long as the dog's functional, and again, remember the picture of the hog catch. Can the dog do that? The dog can do that, that's fine, okay? Rectangular in proportion. So the breed standard says 10% longer than high, measured from point of shoulder to point of buttock. The Italian standards always said the same. 11% is what it says, point of shoulder to point of buttock. Of course, that 0.01% is of no relevance in an AKC standard. In the Italian standard, that basically conveyed a message by saying 11% instead of 10%. It conveyed a message that the dog should be noticeably rectangular, but not excessive. And that's how they did that, using 11%, which is typical of Italian standards, without having to use all the verbiage, okay? I don't know, I had somebody ask me earlier, I don't know if you've heard, but there's some breed standard revisions that are going to be up for membership vote sometime in the future. One of them that's very concerning is that they want to change the way the dog is measured from point of shoulder to pro-sternum. If they change that, they're going to keep the same amount, 10%. They say 11% to match the Italian standard, but again, that 0.01% is of no relevance. The Cane Corso has always been a rectangular breed. The Cane Corso has always been measured from point of shoulder to point of buttock, okay? If they change it to pro-sternum, then obviously whatever the difference is between point of shoulder and pro-sternum, the dog's gonna be shortened by that much, okay? Do you have any Rottweiler people here? Anybody familiar with the Rottweiler?
I showed him for 30 years.
Did you? Okay. So it's an off-square breed, and it's 9 and 10 measured pro-sternum to point of buttock. So basically they're proposing the same measurements or the same length of body as a Rottweiler or an off-square breed or any off-square breed, okay? So hopefully that does not occur. Hopefully the membership doesn't pass it. If it does, then it's going to be tough on everyone, because suddenly the correct rectangular dog is now incorrect, and the incorrect off-square dog will be correct. So hopefully it doesn't pass. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But right now, it is how it's always been. Rectangular breed, 10%, point of shoulder to point of buttock. The other important proportion is the elbow's half the height of the dog, like in many breeds. So that's easy. Point of elbow, half the height of the dog. The head should be proportionally large. The AKC standard says approximately 33% of the height of the withers should be the length of the head. Neck should be equal, okay? That's really the minimum. We want to see at least 1/3 the length of that head being the height of the withers. The Italian standards always said 36%. So that's a little bit more than 1/3. So we want a proportionally large head. We do have a lot of dogs that have really big bodies, and small heads, and that's not good. The Cane Corso should have a proportionally large head, minimum 33% or a third. The height of the withers should be the head, and neck should be equal. So those are the key proportions when you look at that silhouette that you want to take in. Rectangular, point of elbow, half the height, head at least 33% of the height of the withers, a noticeably large head, and the neck equal to the length of the head. Okay, so again, the head is the breed marker, obviously, and we have some nice heads here. Okay, we can see the key characteristics. The muzzle should be 1/3 the length of the skull. Okay, the muzzle should be 1/3 the length of the skull. It should be as wide as it is long, and it should be deeper than it is long. All right, we should have a well-pronounced stop, not straight up and down. Not 90 degrees, just a little bit tilt back, maybe 105 degrees, but a very pronounced stop. And we should have converging planes of the skull and muzzle. I'm going to get into some more details on conversion. That's why I've got the whiteboard here. Okay, I'm also a former head high school football coach, so I can't do anything without a whiteboard. Okay, but in any event, I'm going to get into some more details on convergence. A lot of people really don't understand convergence. They get confused, and I'm talking long-time Corso breeders get confused on. So I'm going to go over some details on convergence with everyone. So there should be nothing round about the head of a Cane Corso. Everything in the head should be chiseled, flat, straight lines, no rounding at all in any part of the head, the muzzle, the skull, anything. So in the bottom here, it says from the well-defined stop, the skull inclines slightly towards the ear set. So basically what that's saying without saying it, and it should say it, is converging planes of the skull and muzzle again, right? That's what that means. Again, this is what I just told you. The muzzle is 1/3 the length of the head. If anything, it can be a little bit longer. It should never be shorter. If it starts getting shorter, then we start getting into a hyper-type dog. And the skull and the muzzle should be 2 blocks or 2 cubes. Again, squareness, chiseled. They should be chiseled looking. Okay, you can see, maybe not. You can see the convergence really good on this dog here, right? You see the muzzle length. Another key aspect when you look straight into the Cane Corso is that the front of the muzzle, and I keep saying square chiseled, but the front of the muzzle actually should be a trapezoid. It should be wider at the bottom than it is at the top, okay? Same thing with this guy, all right? So although you want the appearance of squareness and chiseledness and what have you, no rounding, the muzzle is not actually rectangular or square, it's a trapezoid, wider at the bottom. All right, so the eyes are, it says they're almond shaped, but in reality, they're not almond shaped. I mean, I know it says that, but a Cane Corso eye is definitely more oval than it is almond, okay? It should be in a subfrontal position, slightly above the muzzle plane, okay? Eye color is something that's caused some problems because the yellow bird of prey eye, DQ, in the standard. We have the grays and we have Formentino's, which we call Formentino, which is Italian for fermented wheat. But Formentino is basically a blue fawn. So we have blue fawns, we have blue or gray dogs. So we're going to have a lighter amber yellowish looking eye. Okay, it's impossible not to have that. In addition, a lot of our black dogs will produce gray dogs or even Formentino dogs. So that solid black dog can produce those colors. So it's carrying genetics for that. So you'll see a lighter eye in a lot of our black dogs. You'll see an eye that's a light amber, okay? It has no bearing. It's absolutely fine. Okay. So we'll get into the head. First thing that they're talking about is the bite. So slightly undershot, level, and scissor acceptable, but doesn't put a preference on anything. The preference, it's a big range, right? I mean, that's everything, right? So The preference should be the slight undershot, because again, all of the key head type characteristics of the Cane Corso are that of a slightly brachycephalic breed. Those are the key elements of head type. The Italian standards always had the slight undershot as preferred, okay? It's never had a scissor bite in it. You guys know why we have a scissor bite in the AKC standard from what I explained to you about the history, okay? So the preference, if there was a preference, the preference should be a slight undershot or reverse scissor with level or scissor being acceptable, all right? In the mouth, we have 3 DQs. We have wry mouth, we have more than 2 missing teeth, and we have undershot more than 1/4 inch. The undershot more than 1/4 inch is, of course, totally subjective. There's no way to measure that, nor would I want to see some type of apparatus to try and measure that. So you're going to have to use your best judgment in that undershot. And it's a tough DQ because on one hand, you're saying a very slight undershot, but no more than 1/4 inch, right? So that's a tough DQ, right? 1/4 inch isn't much. It's actually width of that pencil, all right? So a very slight undershot. If you see a big gap there, okay, and your short's more than 1/4 inch, you know, then it's a DQ, all right? It also says in here, the other part's counting teeth. We do have to count teeth in the breed. We have to do the full exam, open the mouth, count the teeth, right? So missing teeth's not a problem. Even with slight brachycephalic characteristics, very rarely is a Cane Corso missing P1s. Very rarely, okay? Typically we have full dentition. I don't know of any Corsos that have been DQ'd or excused for missing teeth, okay? So standard says more than 2, so you got to count them, all right? But it's not a problem with the breed. At the bottom it says a functional correct muzzle will nearly always have an acceptable bite, okay? Well, what's acceptable, right? I mean, again, the scissor's acceptable, everything's acceptable, so that doesn't tell us a whole lot. What I can tell you from a breeder aspect is that if you have a scissor bite dog, okay, that has a good muzzle, which doesn't happen very often, but if you do, and you breed that to another scissor bite dog, you're gonna get away from a correct head really quick. You're gonna get a really longer muzzle. You're not gonna have the depth of muzzle. You're gonna get away from what the correct muzzle should be. All right, here's some heads. That's a nice head. This dog should have a little bit more width of skull, a little bit more pronounced stop. Again, this stop's a little slopey. Skull width's not as good. This is a nice head, good deep muzzle, nice stop, nice wide skull. Okay, it's another good head. Another good head. It's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. I wish we had more from the front, but we don't.
Can you comment how the head develops age-wise? Like what would we see in the puppies? By what age mature do we see those characteristics early on?
So there isn't a whole lot of changing within the head, other than getting a little bit more substance, a little bit more width to the skull. One thing that does change, though, okay, is that the lower jaw will tend to grow slower than the nose pipe. So the puppies that we like to retain as breeders will begin with a scissor bite, okay? And by 4 to 6 months, we like to see that swap to reverse scissor, okay? So that will change, okay, as they grow. Depending on the strength of genetics, some dogs will start out scissor and not wind up with a reverse scissor or an undershot bite until a little over a year, okay? The flip side of that is if we have an 8-week-old puppy that has an undershot bite already, it's going to be a problem at 6 months. It's going to be excessive, okay? So that aspect does change, although the actual muzzle configuration, you really can't tell in the muzzle configuration, you know, but you will definitely see the bite change.
So
though.
if it's a months-old puppies, 9-month-old puppies, they still will have all those features?
Yes, you will have the characteristics, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. But again, you'll get that lanky stage like you get in a lot of breeds, right? The body will get lanky, the head will get a little lanky.
Was that type of jaw, that changes a lot in other breeds. That's why I was asking if how it changes in this breed.
Right, right. And again, the jaw will to a degree, but not extreme, okay? Okay, neck, top line, and body. So again, you guys know structure and movement, and I'm not going to get into a lot of the details on it, okay? We want a very sound dog. The top line should be level, okay? There's nothing specific, no breed-specific construction in a Cane Corso, all right? It's a rectangular breed. It's a rectangular mesomorph. We want a good front, good shoulder layback, good prosternum, good rear angles, okay? Nothing exaggerated. The pasterns will be a little bit laid back like that, a little elastic in the pasterns, all right? Pelvic angles, 30 degrees like in most breeds. Again, it was a versatile farm dog. So it was never bred for a certain purpose or specific purpose. If it was nothing but herding, and they do herding, but it was nothing but herding, maybe the hocks would be lower. If it was nothing but a catch dog, the hocks would probably be higher for stability. So the hock is about an average hock length. It's not really low, it's not really high. It can vary within there. That's not a problem. Again, it's a versatile breed. There's nothing really breed specific about the structure of a Cane Corso. We do want good structure. Okay, we have all the problems other breeds have: short upper arms, lack of prosternum, straight shoulders, straight stifles, barrel hocks, sickle hocks. We have all that. Okay, but I don't have to go into that with all you guys. We're not going to go through all the diagrams of a cow hock or east-west, right? We don't have to. You guys know that. I want a structurally sound dog. Again, the back, a strong, solid back. You can have that dip, or we do have that dip right behind the withers, okay? That's perfectly acceptable and normal and typical, okay? And again, when that dog moves, typically that's going to come out and pull straight, all right? The croup is well muscled, it's long, it's well muscled, and again, slightly sloping because again, 30 degrees, typical pelvic angle on our breed. So tail set is an extension of the back line. We do have some low tail sets, but they shouldn't be. They should be an extension of that spine. It can be carried straight out. It can be carried slightly up. It shouldn't be a candlestick, and it should never be tucked. All right. The length of the tail, standard says fourth vertebrae. When we're docking tails, we have no idea where the fourth vertebrae is. Okay, we just have an idea of where we should cut it. The whole aspect of the Cane Corso tail being docked at a length that's about a handle is just that. The Italian farmers would use that tail as a handle. Again, on the badger hunt, if the Cane Corso went into a badger hole and clamped on a badger, the Italian farmer would grab one leg, the tail, and pull the Corso out with the badger in its mouth. So if you're concerned about the length of the tail, it should never be extremely short because then it's no longer functional. So that tail should be functional, it should be a handle. Okay, and it was used as a handle by the Italian farmers.
Do you allow undocked tails?
Yes.
What's a candle? About how long is a candlestick tail?
Well, it's the positioning, right? Like straight up. So they shouldn't carry the tail straight up when they move.
Not orthodox.
Never heard of that term before.
All right, so again, the stuff we already went over, the elbows have the height of the dog. Everybody says 90-degree front angulation. Well, that's great if you can get that. A lot of times you're not going to get quite 90 degrees, but we want good laid back shoulders, good length of upper arm. We want a good prosternum. We want a well-constructed front. The feet should, the standard says cat feet. I think well knuckled would be a better term. When I think of cat feet, a Cane Corso's feet are never going to be like a Doberman's feet. It's not going to happen. But they should be well knuckled and tight, not loose. Again, they should be able to work all day long without breaking down. The elbows are under. They should not ever elbow out, but again, this is just basic construction. You guys understand all those faults of basic canine construction. Again, moderate angulation, shouldn't be over-angulated. We have some dogs that are sickle-hocked, where they've exaggerated the rear angle in terms of stifle so much that the dogs are sickle-hocked. That's not correct. Of course, a straight stifle is not correct. Again, it's the basics. Nothing breed-specific about the rear on a Cane Corso. We don't want to see barrel hock. We don't want to see cow hock. We don't want to see sickle hock. Okay. The back feet are also well knuckled, but not as much as the front. Rear dew claws are removed always. Front dew claws can remain. I leave them on all my dogs. So you'll see sometimes a Corso with or without front dew claws. The standard doesn't address it. The standard does say rear dew claws are removed. So rear ones are always removed, if they have them. Again, the genetics are diversified. I've had litters that have no dew claws and others that have double dew claws. So, okay, so coat and color. So we have blacks, grays or blue, and fawns. And the fawns will range all the way from the blue fawn, which we call Formentino, all the way to a red fawn. And some people call it a red dog, but it's a red fawn. It's still a fawn-based dog, okay? Something that the standard does not address on the fawns or the Formentinos or the reds is the carboning or the ticking, okay? Well, I say carbon, that's the Italian term for it. AKC term would be sable, right? So you'll see some degree of sable sometimes. I don't have any fawns here. Sometimes in our fawns, our reds, and our Formentinos are our blue fawns. The standard doesn't address it. It's perfectly acceptable. It's not considered a dirty coat or anything of that nature, okay? They might not have it. They might have a little bit of it. They might have a good bit of it. It's irrelevant. So the amount of sable that you'll see in the fawns is of no relevance. Another color you'll see is a chestnut brindle. The standard does not list chestnut brindle. When you register a Cane Corso puppy, one of the colors that you can put the code in for is chestnut brindle. When the breed first went into FSS, those are the colors that the parent club gave FSS. The chestnut brindle has remained, although it's never been added to the standard. When I started on standard revisions a few years back, we wanted to add chestnut brindle for that reason. We have Cane Corsos that are chestnut brindle, being registered chestnut brindle. The standard doesn't say it. Thankfully, it's so close to a black brindle that most people, I don't think, quite understand it's a chestnut brindle, but it is a different color. Like I said, we even have a code for it to register them as a chestnut brindle. So white, some white on the Cane Corso, in regards to the color, is totally acceptable. Typically, you'll find it on the chest, the back of the pasterns. Okay, you'll find some white. That's perfectly fine. You'll see it on the toes sometimes too. Sometimes all 4 feet. No color is preferred over the other. Again, the black and tan point pattern. If you see it, it's a DQ. It's real easy to see. Don't confuse that though with brindling on the legs. Sometimes the Cane Corsos have brindling on the legs that are starting to look like pointing or a pointed breed, but it's not. Okay, it's just brindling. It's just brindling on the legs. It's not a pointed dog. Black and tan pointed pattern is a DQ. All right, so the movement is really beautiful for such a big dog. They have a lot of reach, a lot of drive. The correct movement is an elongated trot or an extended trot. You should have the big open triangles like you see here when these dogs are moving. The print of the foot will slightly pass, okay, with the big triangles. A period of suspension, okay, that you can see in some of the dogs, right? So powerful mover, it can cover a lot of ground with minimum effort, okay? All right, judging techniques, we're going to go over that here hands-on real quick. All right. All right. So you guys have this sheet. I gave it to you as a handout. And the the Cane Corso should have slightly converging planes at the skull and muzzle. A lot of people think that convergence is what you see on the top of the skull, but it's really not, okay? You can have a rounder dome skull and still have a converging planes of the skull and muzzle. So here's some examples. We have correct convergence for the Cane Corso on the top left. We have parallel planes that would be on, say, like a Neapolitan mastiff, okay? We have extreme convergence, okay, where the planes are actually crossing one another rather than meeting at the tip of the nose like on the Cane Corso. Of course, we have divergent planes, which the divergent planes I've really never seen in a Cane Corso. The parallel planes are a common fault. Too much convergence is a common fault. I've really never seen the diverging planes. So again, the next page has more on the convergence in the ANSI material that I gave you. It's basically the same thing on the convergence. I gave the other handout though so that you can see, and I'm going to go over it exactly how to determine proper convergence. Again, what they've taken is the measuring points, the lines, the measuring points, and transpire it above the head. But again, the shape of that skull is not what we're looking at for convergence. All right, so here's some more pictures. We have a correct nasal bridge and nose. So even though the Cane Corso has very slight brachycephalic characteristics, at the nose, there should be a 90-degree angle, okay? The top plane of the muzzle and the front of the muzzle should be 90 degrees. It shouldn't be any tilt back to it, like we get in a more heavy brachycephalic breed. And it definitely should never point out, okay? These are, again, some basic faults of the head. A nose with a protruding tip, a nasal bridge with a hump in it. Should be a flat, the nose bridge should be flat on top. Concave muzzle, which is a hypertype characteristic, is incorrect. Of course, a ram or Roman nose is incorrect. So these are some of the eye sets on the left. Again, the eyes should be slightly above the muzzle plane. They should be set wide apart. They shouldn't be round. Okay, like this guy on the bottom left here. Okay, we shouldn't have round eyes. Okay. This dog, even though we're talking about eyes, has too much wrinkle on the head. All right. There's too much skull there. It's all starting to get some rounding, as you can see. These are two drawings of correct eye set looking straight at the dog. So again, the muzzle should be a third. Here it says 34%. Basically, the Italian Kennel Club standard, where I was telling you about 11% on the length of body, they conveyed the same message without having to put a lot of verbiage into it. Rather than saying 1/3, which we all know is 33.3%, they said 34%. So what they meant by 34%, without having to say it all, was the muzzle should be just slightly more than a third and not shorter, okay? So our standard says a third, there says 34%. The 0.7% is of no relevance. The 34% was simply for that message that it conveys. So here you see a muzzle that's too long, okay? And a muzzle that's obviously too short, okay? And the base of the muzzle should always be at least 1/3 more than the length, okay? So the muzzle should always be very deep, all right? The easiest way, the AKC standard doesn't address that. All it says is the muzzle should be at least 50% the depth of the length. So if I had a Cane Corso with a muzzle that was only 50% deep as it is long, it'd be one ugly, horrible, incorrect dog. So the standard doesn't give you a whole lot to go on other than it should be at least 50% the length. The reality is the muzzle should be at least as deep as it is long. If not deeper, most of the time they are deeper, and that's correct, all right? All right, again, what I said earlier about this right here forming a 90, okay? Should not tilt back like this, okay? It should definitely never protrude, okay? Even though we have a slight undershot bite or reverse scissor bite, again, the characteristics of the Cane Corso being brachycephalic are very slight, so we should never see this, All right. This is more details on eyes. I'm not going to get into that. Again, wide set, slightly above the muzzle plane. All right, and this is what I was telling you all earlier about the trapezoid. All right. So you should see this trapezoid in a correct Cane Corso. You should never see converging side planes like this, and you should not see a rectangular. We do have a lot of rectangulars, okay? And part of the reason for the trapezoid comes from dentition. The dentition is like the final aspect, the final polish on the Cane Corso. There's not a lot of information on dentition in the standard. There's not a lot of information on dentition in any of the Parent Club education materials. Actually, the Parent Club education materials, as you already seen, pretty much tell you, don't worry about the bite. It's not that important. It's not true, okay? Proper dentition for a Cane Corso, and this is where we have a lot of problems, because of course dentition follows muzzle configuration. Dentition is a part or a byproduct of muzzle configuration. If the muzzle configuration is correct, it's broad, okay? What you'll have is the incisors, the upper and lower incisors in a straight line, okay? Bottom ones are almost always in a straight line. Where we tend to have that deviation is in the upper incisors. They'll tend to round, as you would find in a more mesocephalic breed, okay? So we want the incisors in a straight line, upper and lower, and we want the lower and upper canines divergent of one another, okay? And I'll show that a little bit better on the board here. I don't have, unfortunately, any diagrams on that. But that divergence of the upper canines is what gives you the trapezoid. When we have the upper canines diverging from the lower canines, okay, we get that trapezoid. When we have upper canines that are parallel, straight up and down, we get that rectangular, okay? And these are some basic angles that you guys can reference later for the Cane Corso. Like I said, the stops slightly back. It's not 90 degrees, okay? 30-degree pelvic angle, you know, pretty much a 90-degree front. So some basic angles that are in there also, some of the material that I gave you. All right, I think that's it. All right, so temperament. The temperament of the Cane Corso should first and foremost be confident. Should be a very confident dog. Some of them are happy-go-lucky. They're glad to see you. They're all wiggling, waggling all over the place. Others are indifferent. Some might even be slightly weary of you, but irregardless, you should always be confident. We do have a lot of problems with skittish dogs. Okay, I hate to say that, but we do. We have a lot of problems with weak temperament dogs, dogs that lack confidence, dogs that are scared to death for you to examine them in the ring. Okay? A puppy's a puppy, and you can understand some things with a puppy. But the dog should never try and dart out of the ring and take the handler with it, hide behind the handler, lean on the handler, okay? When I was working on the breed standard revisions, I wanted to add something really simple, like extreme shyness should be severely penalized, okay? The breed standard right now has nothing of any value in the temperament section, all right? I didn't want it to be as extreme as the, say, the Doberman and the Rottweiler, where you should excuse it immediately if it won't stand for exam, okay? But use your discretion. But if you come up on a Cane Corso and it's starting to lean and look a little sideways at you and the eyes are rolled back a little bit, it's not a confident dog, okay? It's up to you how many chances you want to give that dog if you can't touch it. If you can't touch it the first time, you can give it another chance if you want to. I wouldn't. It's not a confident dog. The breed should be a kind. It's too big and too powerful of a dog not to be confident. And unfortunately, we have a problem. We have a problem with a lot of the breeders making excuses for that. They're saying the breed should be aloof. Well, aloof doesn't mean scared, okay? So it's a problem, and hopefully we can help to correct that. But there's nothing in the standard that has any extra penalty for it. So if you excuse a dog, it's going to be excused for unable to exam. There's nothing in there that says you should excuse it for being extremely shy. But we have a lot of extremely shy dogs that will not stand there and be examined, and they should be excused. Bottom line, you want a confident Cane Corso. Puppies, you can give some leeway, and I said that earlier if you didn't catch it. I mean, a puppy's a puppy. Everybody understands a puppy. If a puppy sits down, if you go check the testicles on an 8-month-old male, he sits down, set him back up, you get him the second time, okay, I mean, that's a puppy. right? But you got a pretty much a dog that's over a year old, and it's leaning all over the handler. It's behind the handler. It's jerking on the handler. It's, as we say in the South, crawfishing away from you, right? That's a mess, okay? That should be penalized, but the standard doesn't address it right now. All right, so any questions on any of this? I'm gonna go into some details on convergence. The convergence, would be correct convergence. The convergence, as you see in the diagrams, the measuring points are midway at the stop and midway of the back of the skull, okay? The shape of the skull has no bearing on it, okay? And I have people that have asked me, that are longtime Corso people even, have asked me, if something like that is called double convergence, and it's not. You will see this sometimes. You will see a flat part of the skull and a change, another flat part of the skull. That's an incorrect skull because it's not flat. Cane Corso skull should be flat and should form a straight line, okay? But that didn't change the convergence of this dog. Because if we're measuring convergence midway at the back of the skull, midway stop, okay? Irregardless of the shape of the top of that skull, it will not change the convergence. Another aspect is breeds that are convergent but have domed skulls or rounded skulls, okay? So the convergence is the same irregardless of the shape of the skull. But the Cane Corso skull should be flat. That's a key aspect of breed type. The other thing that we'll see when we have too much convergence, or what they call biconvergence, is something of this nature, okay? And that's biconvergence, all right? That's incorrect also. What I was saying earlier about the dentition, is that the canines, of course, the incisors should be in a straight line, okay? I'm talking as you look, if you were to look up into it or down at the bottom, it should be in a straight line, not rounded, like in a mesocephalic breed. And the canines should be divergent, okay? The lower canines are almost always divergent. Where we'll see, and where we see the most differences in muzzle configuration is the top of the muzzle, not so much the bottom jaw. The canine should not be straight up and down or ever parallel, okay? It should never be parallel. So it's really easy to see that when you're looking at the bite. If you see that, that's a good indication of strong genetics and the polish or the finish on a correct muzzle. Divergence of the upper and lower canines, okay? Again, we got DQs in the mouth that don't mean a whole lot, honestly. We don't have a lot of information on dentition, but that's proper dentition for the breed, all right? One thing that the standard doesn't address is the masseter region, or the fill, the cheekiness, or whatever you want to call it, okay? Different terms for it, but it's the masseter muscles, right? So the Cane Corso is a catch and hold dog. It should have well-developed masseter muscle, along with well-developed temporal muscle. That's what, of course, what actuates and clamps the jaw, okay? So the Cane Corso should have a well-developed masseter region, but should never be excessive. It should never protrude past the cheekbones, okay? So they shouldn't be cheeky. We have a lot of Cane Corsos, more so that are shallow, or lack fill, or lack masseter muscle, than we do ones that are cheeky. But you should definitely see good masseter muscle in a Cane Corso. And again, the standard and even the seminar from the Parent Club doesn't address that. And I've gotten asked that a lot, but you should definitely have a good fill in the masseter region. It's an important aspect of a catch and hold dog, right? All right, that's it.